Hi, I'm Jeremy Lynch, and welcome to High Performance Sparring. One of the most controversial subjects that we discuss, even within our own group, the Wednesday night group and many other Jeet Kune Do groups together, is how do you take a student and bring them to a higher level of proficiency in sparring? Whether it's, some people believe in just throwing them in and making them fight, and other people don't believe in sparring at all. So we're going to go into how to develop coaching skills, whether you're an instructor or not. If you're working with each other, you can coach each other, whether you have a small group. The ability to see what somebody is doing wrong and building upon it, and also helping them not to develop bad habits that are just going to hinder their performance in the future. The first thing that can tend to happen is if you have one guy that's just very aggressive, and sometimes it's the instructor, sometimes it's just another student, and as somebody that's a little bit more timid, and they're like, well, you got to get in the water and do this. They meet up with their opponent, and what happens is as they start to get hit, instead of doing the technique that they're supposed to do, those intercepting, the catching, the cuffing, the slipping, the moving, they develop the habits of closing the eyes, leaning the head back, running away. Some of the most important things that we do is we start out with building on a structure. We start out with simple drills that teach a student how to intercept, how to respond to an attack, and then we start to build on it with a little bit more speed, a little bit more, maybe adding another technique. If you don't take them through those basics and repeat them over and over again, one of the terms that we would use is repetition is king, and that is take that technique where I'm catching, and you don't just show the student this and then walk away. Okay, you know how to catch, now let's move to taking a kick, right? You work that catch slowly, and then you make sure that their chin is in the right position. You make sure they're not blinking. You make sure they're not turning their head. And then you build a little intensity and a little speed and make sure that they feel in control. And then you work that up until you can do a fast and hard punch and they can do the catch. And then you move on. So what happens, what we do at the beginning when we bring a new student in is when a new student comes in and we're getting them ready to spar, we go through a skill assessment. When we look at their defense, part of it is we have to look at how they respond to an attack. What are they doing wrong? What are they doing right? And we sort of build on that. So defense is the first thing we look at. Also, what is their response to stress? When you put a little intensity on them, do they just huddle up? Do they go into the fetal position, right? And you have to put that, you don't have to do that in a high intensity the very first time you do this, but you do need to test the student and to make sure that they understand, or that you understand, what needs to be done to help them, to lift them up. Beating a student down is not going to teach them anything. Some people will toughen against the pain, but it won't necessarily teach them how to fight. In most cases, it won't teach anybody how to get better at what they do. It just teaches them how to take an ass whooping. The other is the attitude. The attitude has to be right. It can't be, I'm just there to beat on everybody and show everybody I'm the best. And it can't be too timid. And it can't be too blasé. You don't want somebody that's just sort of there going through the motions. Then we go look at counterattack. What happens? I might be good at covering, but am I just sitting there thinking about knocking away the block, knocking away the strikes? So we start going through how to take a shot and immediately turn that into our advantage. It's all about if somebody's attacking me first, they're being aggressive, and I quickly want to turn them to being on the defense. So the counterattack is quite important. So the drills that we go through, the two main drills that we would go through to test and to help somebody develop some of the skills as well as the attitude for fighting is we have one that's called the wall survival drill, where you are up against the wall, you have to practice your covering, and your partner is going to throw punches, sometimes even kicks, depending on your level, and you increase the intensity depending on how well the person does. If you're just hitting them freely every time, you're not going to go crazy and hard, because again, it's not about just about toughening them up, it's about helping them to do better. So you're going to take the shots, and we'll demonstrate this in a moment. Throwing those shots with boxing gloves on, they're going to practice the actual techniques that they're learning in class, how to cover, how to move. And this is a drill that makes them work those because the wall's behind them, they can't move around, they can't run. So it helps them. But again, you're in a controlled environment. You're saying, this is what we're going to do, we're not going to go any further. And once they feel confident, you move on. Jab, catch, return. Quite important because when a person learns how to catch, it's one of the first things we teach in class as far as defensive movement, because being able to just nullify the power in somebody's punch coming straight at your face so that you can punch back, it gives you a level of confidence, and it's very important. Now we're going to do the wall survival drill, and we're going to do this as a progression. So this is basically like it sounds. He's up against a wall, and this keeps him from cheating a little bit, moving backwards, and it's a very good, we call it a survival drill because it can help you to survive. If you're stuck in the end of an alley or in the corner and somebody just starts wailing on you, you got to learn how to cover and to kind of come up and get out of it. The progression that we're going to start with is he cannot move. There's no bob and weave. All he's working is the covering with his arms. Now, watch out for the way he's going to cover it. So dropping his arm to cover the body and raising it to cover the head. He's going to try to use this. When I hit, I'm not being completely nice. When I hit to the side, I'm going to try to find these openings in the middle. And when he opens here, I'll try to come to the head. So we'll build up sort of some speed and intensity, and he gets to work on just really staying covered and trying not to get beat up. And that's all the drill does for you. Okay, ready? One of the most simple drills that we use to teach a person to be able to stand in front of a fighter and to defend themselves is the basic boxing drill, the catch return. Before we go right into the drill, let me show you how to do the catch. So what you'll find is when people are improperly trained, a person throws a punch and they'll sort of lock out in front of them. And if you already know this, then you sort of bear with me. But the idea for the catch is that it is not really a smother. It's not, when you come in and smother, you're always stepping at an angle and you're moving off the line. The catch is a small pop, and it meets the punch close to the end of its execution. So if he's coming at my chin, I don't want to meet it out here, because if he's an actual fighter, he'll probably go around it, or he'll throw a second punch. Either way, then I have to use my second hand right away. You don't want to have to do that until you're in the mix a little bit. So the catch comes with my rear hand right along center line, and if he's punching right at my chin, it's a pop. So the bottom of your palm, swiveling sort of on the wrist itself, should be popping out, boom, and stopping. And that's what nullifies the power. The nice thing is when you pop, you sort of lock your arm into place, and you can take a pretty strong punch. So what happens is if he really lays into the punch, if it's too much for my arm to stop, your whole body tends to move with it. And so you'll still be able to cover your face. And again, this is not intercepting, but it gives you that confidence to stand in front of an opponent and say, look, I can at least trade right here. Bob Bremer said that Bruce Lee told him, you should at least be able to trade with him, stand and fight. So the catch return is a drill that we use to start getting you on the habit of not just kind of standing and blocking and moving until you find an opening. Is automatic response, boom, and I throw back. The drill can be done in sets of 3s or 4s, but to start with, we just take the guy who has a punch, you catch, and I throw back and he catches. Okay? So what you should be doing is making sure he's actually trying to touch your chin. If you're not good at it yet, you can have him throw it with less intensity, but the reach should be right there on the chin so that you're not getting confident stopping a guy that's actually not trying to hit you. So he touches my chin, boom, I'm going to catch, and then boom, I'm going to go back at his chin. Then once you get that down, you should go with a little more intensity and with more speed. Okay? I'm responding with an even tempo now. That doesn't. So as you get better than that, or as you get better at the drill, what you want to do then is he hits, boom. Sometimes I'm going to take a little second. Sometimes it's going to be right on the end of his punch. See, on the half beat. And that's as you get better, because you'll notice it becomes harder when you can't predict when the punch is going to land. So work this. This will give you sort of confidence as a beginner fighter, and as you get into sparring, that you can at least stand there in front of your opponent and hit back. So it doesn't matter who initiates the drill. Sometimes you get kind of caught in the section where one guy is sort of the initiator, and you're always hitting, catching and hitting back. So to make it more like sparring, it's whoever hits first. So we're moving around. And it's not always going to be clean because sometimes you're both punching at the same time. And when that happens, make sure that you're not reaching out too far. Okay, you'll see that punch coming in. Oh, you would have it here, but again, in a real fight, he's going to think of that hook. So one more time. Okay, make sure that your hand stays close to the chin. If you do have to reach out for it, snap it back right away along the center line. In order to create a safe environment for students of all levels to spar, you want to teach them how not to get knocked out, how not to knock others out, and you do this by teaching them that they don't have to follow through completely on their strikes. You can still use the same speed, but you can modify the intensity. To prevent knockouts, you need to understand what causes a knockout, and then you try to keep yourself from falling into the situations to the best of your ability. A knockout is caused by rotational force or acceleration or deceleration. You've seen people get hit on the chin, the head spins around, and this causes the brain to take trauma. And many times, whether it's straight onto the chin, going back, the reason that this happens many times is when the person's head is completely up and away, when the hands are down and they're sort of doing the peekaboo, where they're looking up and over the gloves. This makes it much easier to accelerate the head. And what happens is that the head is able to spin freely, causing this sort of impact. It's very important not to just bang on each other. And there's a reason we really focus on not getting knocked out. It's not because we worry that people aren't tough enough or anything. But the fact is, the more you get knocked out, the easier it is to get knocked out. You take continual damage to the brain, and it doesn't really heal. You can get these kind of buildups of lesions on the brain that just don't seem to go away. And so there's many theories on what exactly is happening, but we know very well that just taking these punches and saying, I'm a tough guy, it doesn't help. So you want to learn to keep control of your neck. One of the things is that in fighters, one of the things Bert Poe taught us as a fighter is that we should have bad posture. One is this, of course, we've talked about before, the curvature of the spine and the sinking down. But that is also tucking the chin into the shoulder, whether you're throwing one punch or the other, and keeping your neck tight and your chin lowered so that your shoulders are up. And this gives you a much more solid base. Yes, you're taking some blunt force trauma, but as your shoulders stay up close to your ears, it gives you a little bit more stability for your head. So again, it's not always the trauma itself to the skull from the hand, but the whip of the head. So this is what you want to learn to control by the proper posture. Of course, proper technique, slipping in and off the line, just not getting hit at all is what we really focus on in Jeet Kune Do, but you can't guarantee that. There's people of different levels sparring each other. So you give them the tools, but really you can really get people good about staying in their right stance. Not enough people focus on that. I see it at seminars all the time. People have a really bad stance, but they're really fast and they move around and all this. Get in that nice tight posture, especially when you get inside and you're close to the hands. But it's equally, if not more so, important when a kick is flying in at your head, that you need to stay nice and tight. So shoulders up, chin down, nice solid block here, and then when you get hit, if you have to, it's safe. Also, if you get hit on the forehead, it's a better shot to take because it just structurally it's a little bit easier. Now, no, you don't want to get hit at all, but that if you're going to get in a fight, you're going to get hit somewhere. The reason you'd want to take a shot to the forehead if you have to is because the skull is designed to protect against forward impact. That is why you want to train out any kind of rotation or running posture or pattern that would open up your temple or the back of your head to attack. One of the ways we prepare for the worst case scenario, let's say your posture isn't good and you get hit, is what we call the knockout drill. Interesting thing about the knockout drill is that you're going to have your student bend at the waist and you spin them around. Now, they actually do this in baseball training, and then I've seen Little League guys do it. It's pretty funny. But the idea is that when you spin around standing up, you get a whole different feeling than when you spin around and the fluid in the ear is sort of being strained at a different angle. The room is really tilting and everything, and it's very similar to getting hit. Now, believe it or not, it does help. Because I've had people question, well, okay, you're learning how to fight when you're dizzy, but is it the same as getting hit? When I kickboxed, I got hit one solid one, and I was able to immediately take control, and it was from the training. Even though the room was shaking, I was still able to continue to attack and basically make it so that my opponent did not even know I was hurt for that moment or dazed, which is a big thing. If you let your opponent know that you're hurt, they'll kind of smell blood and they come after you. So you need to learn how to really take control of that. So with the knockout drill, it really simulates that shot to the head where you feel like the floor is moving and you're about to fall down, and that would really open you up to something dangerous. We're going to demonstrate the basic beginner version of the knockout drill, which is 6 to 9 rotations. And again, the idea is just build up as you get better at controlling your surroundings, fighting back to center. You'll need a few more rotations, and it really does help. So I'm going to have Steve rotate me around, and then I'm just going to come up with a straight blast. Variations are you can do this with regular boxing, and then we even work up to a kickboxing version of it. Okay, so I'm going to reach over, cross my left hand, and just basically plug my nose. Not everybody does this. It's just to make you breathe through your mouth. It's just one little extra irritation. And you just basically fight back until you get your balance. We're going to give you 3 emergency responses, meaning we're all about intercepting, but it can always happen. You're either going to get surprised, the guy's better than you think he is, and suddenly there's a punch on its way to your face. So the first one we're going to give you is the high cover-up. And the idea is, not only am I covering my head, but I'm also able to use this as an entry to get inside and maybe cause some damage. So let's just focus on the cover itself. By reaching up and grabbing the back of my neck and ducking my head down into my shoulder a bit, you see this? The less of my head that you see, the better. Because if the punch is on its way and I'm grabbing my neck like this, I might cover my chin a little bit, but you still got your face wide open. Some people do it this way, and then you still have, that may be okay with big old boxing gloves on, but in a real fight, the fist is going to slide right through that. Also, when you grab tight and behind your head, you're flexing your arm, which causes everything to be nice and tight. Because if I grab my head and you punch me in the arm, my head's still going to jerk over, causing a possible concussion. As soon as I flex, this sort of becomes one trunk, and you sort of absorb it down through your waist. Okay, that's the idea. So there's the technique, flex, cover tight. And then when you're fighting, one of the ways that we really like is you're stepping directly forward. So if your opponent is throwing a punch, you step in, you can hit the pec, hit the shoulder, or even the face. So if he's in left lead, Steve's going to throw the hook. Let's say I'm stepping here. This is just covering. Okay, I'm trying to stay in and behind us. Now, depending on what you're doing, this rear hand should stay up tight, okay, and the elbow should stay down. Once you do this, your hand should always snap right back down into position or into a strike. Okay, you don't want to get in the habit of doing things like this where you're not coming back to covering your ribs. So he throws that hook, boom. I'm taking that as a cover. One real quick note, if your stance isn't good in something like this, it's going to defeat the purpose. If my feet are too aligned when he does that, he hits. You see what happens is I'm off balance now. So make sure you've got that nice stance, and when he moves in, boom, I'm covering that. Now I'm going to do this a little slower so I don't hit him too hard. This is going to be quite painful. Is when you step in, I'm going right here to the shoulder, to the pec, or to the face or head. Okay. Now it doesn't have to be a real pronounced, stepping in elbow. It's a quick little thing. As he steps in for that, boom, you sort of let his force cause the damage. It's kind of beautiful, kind of nice. He takes that, boom, taking the shot here. There's a cluster of nerves here that causes a lot of pain, and when you hit it hard, it makes it much harder to control the arm. So it's kind of a nice technique. Boom, take that shot in. It also can go into more advanced guys might throw a little upward elbow as they do it. Be careful when you're first working that in actual practice, because when you think upward, many times you get it in the wrong technique. See? So think straight. Grab the back of your head, not your ear. So I see a lot of people doing this, grabbing the ear. And if he punches that and he's a professional, it's not going to help much. I heard people say that your hand will kind of absorb the punch. I tried it. It didn't work. So grab the back of your head, step in nice and tight, and flex the arm and your whole trunk together in one. Practice this in short little bursts. So it's not, just, boom. Practice getting tight, because you want to practice getting that whole body to flex and get into one piece together. So he throws his punch. Now, you can do this defensively if you're sort of surprised. I'm just here, he throws his punch, and it's not bad as a defense. I just like it better moving forward, because the moment he sees me coming forward, many times they're a little less certain about the punch. They'll see this entering, and they may kind of just dissolve some of the energy. Maybe not. If they're fully committed, maybe it won't. But either way, you have the intercepting line. Okay, one of the drills, once you've gotten this shield down, this cover down, one of the nice drills that we do to make sure you're starting to feel this, because again, doing this stationary and doing this in a little bit of a combination is a big difference. Once you add the combinations, you start to feel more like a fighter. You're getting into your legs, you're having to move, you're having to adjust to your partner. So what we're going to do is, Steve's actually feeding with boxing gloves for now, and that's fine. You can use focus gloves, whatever, but this is nice because he's going to be punching. If you use focus gloves, you have to slap with an open hand like this. So he's fine. So I'm going to do the cross punches here, which is I'm punching diagonally across. We could have also done them this way. But because he's going to punch with either hand at the end of this drill, this makes it a little bit more real for us. So I'm going to throw 4 punches. 1, 2, 3, 4. He's then going to throw his hook. I'm going to cover, and then he's going to throw a second hook. So now again, you can play with the numbers, the rhythm. He can throw just 1 hook sometimes. Other times he can throw 2. Sometimes he'll start with his left. Sometimes he'll start with his right. That stuff you guys can figure out on your own. We're just going to show you how it works. So this is just the drill. Then I'll show you some ways to apply it. Okay, so I'm going to go. Okay, and try to get in there nice and tight. Sometimes it's hard when you're really close. Okay, now again, right on the end, this is where it's important. I'm committed to an attack, and he's able to punch right as I'm finished. Boom, right? Or right as I've rotated this hand out. So this is really a lot more realistic than obviously just standing there and taking the shots, which is the best way to start. So we get this, the punches are down, and then obviously you get a bit more advanced, you add movement. You can start to get a little bit more like a fighter. Start using your footwork. Break the fighting measure, enter inside. All that kind of stuff you can do. Next, some people have asked us, well, how would you apply this? How would you use this in the real world or in a fight? Because, well, what do you do after that, right? So I get inside, okay, I've covered. But really, if you've worked with us at all, you know that we're all about hitting. So, of course, we've already talked about the elbow as the strike. So we'll just go ahead and bypass this. That's sort of understood. You take a shot when you can get it. If his pec is there, if his face is there, you use it. I've had experience with many different martial arts, and I'm going to show you some ideas that I like depending on what you're doing, depending on your game. I really like to use the elbows once I'm inside. You're already there. Elbows are hard enough to get when you're out here and you're fighting the game, to just say, oh, I'm going to elbow this guy. There's too many things he can do from here to there. So it's a wonderful time when you're already inside with that elbow. So if I do those covers, 1, 2, you can just check the back of his pec. His tricep. You take a quick elbow here, here. Now be careful with your partner. The smallest of elbows, if you're not wearing a mouth guard, can chip your teeth and knock them out. And even a gentle elbow like this can cause some pretty bad damage to the face. It doesn't look like much on a glove because he's got all this swivel room. You hit on the head, it's a short, quick jerk. Just be careful. Most of you guys already know this stuff, so I'm just trying to cover all of our bases. So I'm doing this cover 1, 2. I'm already inside for that nice elbow. Now that's because I finished with the left. So obviously the right elbow is the next shot. Bruce Lee used to say, take your next shot. Sounds very basic. Okay, we're going to do this from another side. So does it again. I'm going to go cover, cover, and just that simple downward cupping of the tricep and upward pop of the elbow. It's almost the same movement. It's that nice high cover, but it's an upward elbow. When you do the elbow itself, we do it past the ear. You don't necessarily have to grab the head when it's an attack, but it's basically the same move. So cover, cover, boom. I'm taking that quick shot to the face. And you know, a lot of times when you see punches coming in, you're grabbing a hold of a person's arm and doing this and doing this. I don't like a lot of it because it's a little bit fake. If he's throwing a really crazy fast punch and I'm grabbing his arm, yeah, come on. You know, but I'm here and here. See, that's pretty, even if he retracts his arm, I could grab something. Even if his hand is there, you're going to cause some damage. So very quick, very simple. Now, you can do other elbows, but remember, take your closest and easiest shot. If I grab here, we don't need to get into all this, but I'm just going to show you real quick. I could do this, right? I could do all these, but this is where my arm is. So there's your elbow. Do whatever you want. Do an uppercut. Another way, if you're into more of the ground fighting, it's a nice quick way that we used to do in Shudo, is when the shot comes in 1, 2, is he would just have the automatic wrap for whatever, you know, going under, stepping through, taking the arm, causing some damage. For me personally, when I get an arm here, I'm still thinking elbow because I'm not as much of a ground specialist as some of our other guys. But 1, 2, boom, you take that arm wherever you can get it, lopsow, take the shot, and notice he's off the line as he should be as a fighter. He sort of naturally went away from where my dangerous points are going to be, my dangerous strikes. But there was the shoulder is right there. And you elbow the inside of the deltoid to where the pec meets. Again, that huge cluster and under the arm, you're going to cause some severe damage and maybe some tearing that'll cause this person to wish they weren't fighting. One more time, 1, 2, boom. Take that shot to the arm, to the face, and then even then, once they double over, you can take whatever you want. Our next emergency response is the three-point cover. This was popularized by a defensive boxing program, and I think many people are recognizing this and using it now, and it works quite well. Again, defense or emergency response means, as JKD guys, we're intercepting, we're trying to take those shots, but when you are either hit from the side or you have a punch coming at the last second or you're being pushed into a corner, these emergency responses can be very helpful. So the idea is the same thing. We're going to do that cover on the same line, but now I'm going to add my rear hand, grabbing just below the elbow and locking that in. And the benefit of doing this is that when you get that same cover and add the other arm, this will work even against straight punches. Because of the way we throw this, and anyone that probably is very good at fighting with this, is your energy should be forward. So you're not as much of a danger of being hit to the body as you would if you were just standing there and letting a guy punch you. When we step forward with this, it's going to cause them to really have to try to pick their shots because they're sort of feeling attacked at the same time. So let me just show you with Steve here. Once again, taking the back of your head and taking the cover, and now I'm going to bring this up as 1 right here. And notice the shot again, it's very tight, and this three-point cover is literally because you got your 2 elbows and then you've got your head. That's the 3 points. And I don't want to get hit in the head. So again, you got the same tight, nice high cover, but I also don't want to get hit in the face. You're not going to grab this position and stay there. So I'm trying to show you this with Steve firing multiple shots, but you're not going to just stand here and fight like this all day. This is the idea with the emergency response is you get surprised. He comes in, this guy, whoa, and you have that second to cover because all we're ever trying to do is go from defensive to offensive. He's offensive right now. I come in, he throws a shot, boom, 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 and I'm trying to get back in there. The moment I find a beat between a punch, especially if he gets his hand broken, that'll give him pause, right? Boom. Now, like I said, standing there and doing this technique isn't going to be all that effective. I'm showing you sort of for the technique's purpose before, just so you can get it, and how a punch might ride off of this. But if you stand there, they're just going to change the angle of the punch and knock you out. So the idea for us, and for most people that use this, is to crash with it. So it might be on the second punch. You might be stunned enough that a person's punching that as he gets the hook up, it's like, or straight or whatever, I'm covering, and then maybe the second one is the punch. But the idea is if you crash, it should stop the attack where it is. So he's moving in, and and as I step into this, I hit his hand there. Sometimes as he hooks, it's just going to go boom straight into his chest. And again, that's going to cause severe pain. It's going to stop him. You can even crack the sternum. It's happened. So he steps in and take that shot. And again, now this time, this elbow nailed him. So the forward movement is going to sort of deter the oncoming attack because of how aggressive it is, and the fact that you're using elbows causes the pain. You're also, of course, for any beginner, you're moving inside the power arc of his punches. you've taken the straight punches and he's hurting his hands. But as you move in, I'm trying to get right on the inside where, like, just like before, we can throw elbows, uppercuts, headbutts, and whatever. So one last time, he's stepping in with that, and I'm taking this shot, and see how nice it is. It always finds something to hurt. Step in with that, cause some pain, and then always think about your next attack, your combination from there. I'm going to step in, boom, so go through the punch one more time. As I step in, boom, and then I should already be thinking hit, not how long can I maintain this? It's a one-time use. Hit it. You've got yourself back to offensive now, and continue to hit until they stop being a threat. Okay, and because this is a sparring video, not a self-defense street fighting video, we're always going to go to the chest. You know, obviously, if you've got a buddy nice enough to spar with you, you're not going to come ramming him in the face with your elbow. I'm just making, you know, I always think street, but sparring has to be controlled enough so that your partners keep coming back. So when he throws that, boom, I'm going in and taking that shot to the chest. And even then, your partners may want to put on some chest protection. So the last and most aggressive of the emergency responses is the modified dive. We got this from Bert Poe, and you know, many people use the dive, so that's what I'm saying. We got this particular version from Bert Poe. Normally in a street fight, and that's what Bert tended to teach, it was fingers to the eyes, you know, maximum damage right off. And again, that's what we want, but you're sparring. So what we've done is modify this for sparring, and that is you're going to use your palms. So as I step in with my opponent, I'm going to be using the palm, and I'll show you how it works in a second. So the original one, again, a dive is, you can do this from stationary, from, you know, you're not really expecting to fight, or you're already moving and a person just comes lunging at you. You're not ready to do all your nice clean technique. You just have to stop him. But a lot of times we practice this sort of from a nonchalant pose, because that's usually when you're going to use this. You're not ready, you know, or maybe there's more than one attacker. So I'll have Steve come back on. The idea, once again, is that as a person that's not aware of what's about to happen until the last moment, or a person that's just not all that clean yet on how to move and pick openings, the dive gives you some major opportunities with this. So, and that is, you're taking control of the center line right away. If he's one of these really angled stances where he's sort of in a side stance, if I throw this dive, boom, I take control of this line right away. But the idea is as opposed to the idea of doing all of this stuff on this line, I'm just hitting. And anytime you're able to go immediately offensive and cause some disruption in your partner or your opponent, it's going to make it easier for you to follow up. And combinations is how you get the win. It's the constant follow. So if he's in a more square stance, I might come right through. But the idea is, what's beautiful about this is you don't have to worry about the particular move he's doing. But we've got our gloves on, and maybe he's got headgear on that covers the forehead or whatever. But the idea is, boom, I'm just taking the palms right to the forehead. Now, when you do this, once again, just like the covers and the various things, you have to make sure your chin is protected. I'm not doing this, you know, because again, he may be faster than I think. The shoulders should be up, your head should be a little bit ducked, and you're looking down this line. And sometimes, depending on how low you're dropping, you might be looking under the hands. But this is a quick shot. This is not, you know, locking this out and letting him figure out what to do. So he steps forward, boom, I'm taking that shot to the head, and it nullifies pretty much everything you want to do. One of the things that this really is a benefit for when you're sparring, so you probably, if you've sparred at all, you probably have times where you say, hey, let's just do some light sparring, kind of get acquainted with what we're doing. But your partner's idea of light sparring is like 10 levels above what your idea of light sparring is, or maybe they only have one level. And what happens easily is that you start escalating. You have to escalate, and then it becomes a full-on brawl. Well, everyone knows you're tough, right? The idea is it's sparring. You're trying to learn how to properly use your technique. So with the dive, I'm going to have Steve sort of just throw a flurry. You know, we're going light, and I'm trying to practice my technique. And then suddenly Steve comes in, boom, and I'm just going to hit. And, you know, you can usually tell. You catch the guy in the chin lightly or whatever, and all of a sudden his eyes sort of narrow, and he gets a little crazy looking. Next thing you know, they're trying to knock you out. So this is one way to just sort of stop the person without having to go right into, you know, all your major techniques, right? Your knees, your elbows, your kicks. So it stops it, moves him back, and he says, hey, oh, sorry, you rushed in on me. So either way, the guy's attacking. I'm just, you notice that because it goes right up the middle, and I'm taking his forehead on this, it stops the attack. Be careful that you're hitting the forehead if possible, because you are using the palm, and it's less padded in the glove than the front part. So just a little pop. The thumbs will give you a little bit of, the padding here will give you a little protection when you do this. But you don't have to be that close. I don't have to get in here and really nail him for a sparring thing. We're moving. I might do this film, and I'm just popping him enough to send his head back. One more time, though, let me cover this. If he's in that angle, I'm cutting right over his arm, right? If he tends to put this side more forward, and he's really got it turned, I'm going to cut right over the arm. But it's not something you should have to think about. You just do it. And this not only is a great technique, but in and of itself, but it helps to teach you for the JKD stuff how to hit along the straight line without worrying too much about the other punches, because it's easy to sort of veer off and try to deal with the punch itself. Now that we've given you a few emergency responses, now we're going to step into some defensive maneuvers. These are the things that are going to work more regularly, where the emergency responses, you're thrown off guard, you have to step into it and try to keep yourself from getting killed in that moment. Okay, the best thing to start with, and the most common thing to start with when we're teaching, is footwork. And to keep in mind with all of these defensive maneuvers is that because we do Jeet Kune Do, we tend to try to do everything with a hit. Okay, that means, Jeet Kune Do means the way of the intercepting fist, but it really just means hitting when somebody is moving. And depending on your style, you'll find this useful. But the idea is we try not to just move and then hit later or cover then hit. Everything we try to do is try to stop somebody with that movement. So as we start into the footwork, we're going to use what we call a curve step. And we'll start out with the basic way of doing this. The curve step, the idea is that when an opponent is lunging forward on the straight center line, or on your center line, depending on how you're standing, everybody has a center line. That's what's facing your opponent. I'm going to go off of that line and get an angular shot or an angular defensive move. To do this at the beginner level, we're going to let you take a 1-2 step so that you get this nice and clean. Because if you try to do it the advanced way, many times you end up doing it wrong and you end up throwing yourself in a bad position. So what we're going to do is, I'm facing my opponent here, and I'll bring Steven in a second and show you with a partner. But I'm going to step off of that center line. In other words, my center line is also where the hand of my opponent is. It doesn't matter what stance he's in, because even if he's here, I'm lining up typically with the best, they're going to line up in the best way that they think they can hit you. So that's their center line. I'm going to step off of this line, and again, I'm covering, hand is up. I'm showing you my feet, so the hands are up, you're covered. But as I step off of that line, the knee is slightly going to turn also, so that I'm not stepping groin open. And then quickly, the rear foot is going to move behind as you pivot on your lead foot. And this gives you an angular shot. As a person's lunging in, many times that'll give you the ability to go right over their lead hand. So I'm going to have Steven left lead. And in Jeet Kune Do, we use our strong side in front. I'm right-handed, but many people are going to be in that opposing lead. This works, by the way, no matter what lead you're in, but it may it'll determine which direction you tend to want to curve out. So he's in left lead, so as he, let me give you a little bit more room. As he steps in, I'm going to move off to this line. And right now I'm just using a cutting punch, a lead straight. So for my feet, again, if I take a big step and he lunges in, and then I'm moving here, and I'm over here, you know very well he's continued his attack. There's not going to be any, throwing one punch and he's waiting for me to punch him in the face. So keep that in mind when you do the little step off the line, that even though this is a simple movement, you have to be careful not to take too much unrealistic time. When you have a partner that's nice, they may tend to do it and make you feel good. The punch goes out, I step over here, I punch him in the face, all's well, right? But it's not realistic. So after you get this down, have your partner at least try to touch your forehead when he moves forward. Get the footwork done first. But as you start to add drills to these, you're going to make sure that your partner is really intending to touch you as he moves forward. So I'm going to move off, 1-2, and getting this side movement. So again, this is the beginner or basic way to do the footwork. It's a little bit slower than the more advanced way, but it helps you to get the proper technique because you want to be angling as opposed to just sort of hopping into a position. So he's going to step forward, boom, boom. You do not have to wait for your foot to continue. You don't have to wait for your rear foot to come to rest to do your attack. And that's why we talk about doing everything with a strike. So if I'm going to use this intercepting shot, boom, see the rear foot hadn't stopped moving yet, but I'm not going to wait because he's coming from my face. Boom. That final movement of my foot actually helps to sink more power into the shot as it sort of settles into the target. Right now I'm cutting into his arm, his forearm with my forearm, which is nice, but the punch is supposed to settle into the face or drive through his glove if it's covering. So stepping off, I'm taking that nice shot in. Now, I was showing you guys stuff with my rear hand down because I wanted you to see my feet and focus on that. Make sure that your hand is up when you do this stuff. Because if you get in the habit of doing stuff like this, you're never guaranteed that anything is going to work because it's all down to the skill of your opponent and the amount of times you practiced. So we're moving, 1, 2, okay? So you see, these are 1, 2. I'm not moving that far off the line, okay? When I'm doing this right now, it's just enough to get him to come to be that his power is sort of going past me and he's running into the punch. If he's more square when he attacks, and I do this, I may have to have a little bit bigger of a movement at the end. Now, the more advanced way of doing this technique is to do this sort of with one quick movement. Because the faster he lunges, the less time I have for a 1-2 sort of movement. But do get the first one down first because it can make it kind of messy later on if you go straight to the second one. So the idea is when he moves, boom, even though it looks like a 1-2 because the rear foot's settling second, I'm actually in the air at the same time with both feet. Instead of 1, 2, it's boom. And the final rotation adds power to your punch. So he steps, just like before. So what's happening is, just like with our push shuffle footwork that we use when we go for the lead attack, I'm pushing that off of the line, but then using my torso to pivot my body. It basically creates that inertia to keep you moving once you're in the air. You don't have the friction to use to move yourself. Before it was step, and we could use the ground. Now I'm using the torso, boom, to create the turn. And again, you hit when you can, but if you can hit at the end, that makes the most power out of the shot. Okay, now I'll show this to you in the most orthodox way, which is usually left to left or a matched lead. And sometimes you're going to have to move towards the rear hand. Because before he was left and I was in right lead, and it made it easy to sort of swivel out to the outside of his lead hand. We try not to move towards the rear hand, but it's not always realistic to not do that. And really well-trained fighters do this on purpose, but they have sort of something in mind when they do it. So you don't just arbitrarily lunge any old direction, but sometimes his punch is going to be more on this side of my head anyway, and so you may start this direction, or you're just trying to set something else up. Maybe moving this way just isn't working against the guy. Okay, so as we go, he's going to throw that, stepping off with this, and I'm going to immediately follow with that rear hand to close the line, especially when you're circling towards the rear hand, because I'm moving here, and he's not in quite a power base, but he can throw more, at least a jab sort of cross, a snappy sort of cross at that point. So that's one reason why everything should be intense and really should be a punch as opposed to just testing their guard when you're doing something like this. So I'm moving, and I'm going to throw that rear hand out, close that line up. Now, when you're doing this, you're stepping and pivoting, and then when you sink the cross, you'll notice it takes a little bit of work. It's not as easy as it looks because you're pivoting your rear foot, and then with the rear straight, you're sinking, or across, you're sinking your weight right away. It's a great drill to practice your dexterity. So I'm moving out, boom, boom. I'm actually using his body to sort of help me as I slam into it. It helps me to finish my rotation, and I'm dropping into it with the rear. All right, here are a couple of options to make this work in a more realistic fashion. Now my partner is going to be throwing just a combination, a straight combination. And the idea is, again, you may not always be ready to do this on the first hit. So I'm going to have him throw a couple of straights, boom, 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 and then I'm going to add this on the outside. So Obviously, you want to do this and then work up to speed, work up to some realistic speed so that it makes you feel like you can actually do this. But instead of just doing it on his first move all the time, you're going to, like for now, you can do the covers, the various shields, okay, but for now I'm just going to do the peekaboo because that's very common if you get surprised or pushed into a corner and you get sort of settled back into your stance and now you need to get out of there, okay? You don't need to wait all day, let the guy throw 64 punches and then do it. You can do it on the third or the fifth. I'm going to do it against his lead hand because I still like circling away from the rear, but it works both ways. That's a little bit more advanced, though, because you have to really angle off to go against the guy's unmatched rear hand. Okay, so he's going to throw. So as you can see, that the movement isn't very big. When you're that close and you're at high speed, the movement should be small and accurate. If I try to take a big lunging movement at that distance and at that speed, it's not going to work. So now let's do this. He's going to be in a match lead, and he's going to throw his punches again. This time I'm going to, on his lead punch, I'm going to cut. Sorry, on your rear punch, I'm going to cut, which is going to take control of that just enough that he has to force this punch, and as he does, I'm going to take that shot and move off the body. This is all stuff to just get you comfortable with movement, because if we give you only one way to do it, no fight goes as planned. So you have to learn how to move and sort of adapt in various ways. So as he's coming in, I may cut the rear hand, sorry. So I'm doing the peekaboo, 1, 2, 1. I'm going to cut and then move off with the hit. Okay, so let's do that. Sometimes do it on the first set of 2, sometimes do it on the second. Okay, now we're going to work the side step. And in our terminology, it's a lateral push step. And again, this is just movement. This is to get you moving away from the rear hand if we're in match lead or moving in the direction you want. And Steve punches. I want to step off of this line. I'm just going to push step off of this line and take my punch. So we'll do this in a singular fashion a couple times. Just going to move, boom, and I'm going to step and hit. We always like to accompany everything with a hit. We've already said this. Sometimes you may end up on the inside of his punch, but many times because you're moving as you notice he's trying to attack, you can come over the outside. But that's why you work the drill. You have to figure out how to fit into your opponent. So he takes that punch, boom, I'm stepping off and hitting. And I want to make sure that I'm still in my stance. Make sure, this is obvious, right? But make sure that you're not in a position when you finish that you're not able to continue fighting. And that's why we'll add a second or a third, or we'll just keep doing this as a drill where you're moving around the room. I'll just do a couple to show you. But as he covers and wants to attack again, as I move, I'm sorry, he punches and I cover, he may want to re-attack. So this isn't the end of the story. And sometimes you throw your rear cut in there just to make sure it's all nice and clean. But just use that movement, really work the footwork, and then make sure that you're getting those punches out nice and clean. You're obviously, partner, keep your hand up so that you're not catching everything on the face. But really work this, stay light on your feet, stay on the balls of your feet, and try to be light and move. Now here's a real simple one. This is the step out. It's similar to the side step, but now we're only going to use one foot. And this works in both directions, so it's nice because it'll work against either lead equally well. So the idea is if Steve takes that shot, I'm going to just step out with the rear foot, take my shot, and again, I'm not stepping back, and on this one, I'm not stepping forward. Okay, this is just a simple side step, but instead of following it like I did before, I'm just taking a quick lunge. I turn my knee to keep my groin covered and take that shot straight down the middle. I love when this goes straight up the center and their punch goes over the shoulder. I try to get in that position if possible, not always possible. But that's one of the reasons that this hand has to be right here, because he may not punch straight either, you know. So if I'm here, you just have to make sure that you're covering using your shoulder. So he takes that shot, I'm going to take that, moving, bring the hand right back to face, okay? I can also take the step out with my right foot and intercept with my rear, or punch with my rear hand. Okay, so we're moving here, taking that same shot. Notice Steve's still in the same lead, and in a second I'll have him switch. Boom. This one, my lead hand then becomes the rear, sort of the rear parry, because it's almost like I switch leads because I'm rotating as I step. So this hand has to just cover that line. Don't block, don't slap. Just make sure that in case he throws a goofy looking punch and it hooks in or whatever, you're not walking into it. Boom. Okay. So this is the same one that would work with an actual cross or a straight rear. They both work equally well with this footwork. So he's going to do it. Boom. I'm going to hit. And so I'm hitting his glove, as you'll notice, which is one of the reasons you should really get good at that catch, because it works well for when he's feeding. Okay. Taking that. And make sure get the footwork clean. Okay. Now we're pretty close. If you have trouble getting this, have your partner take a little bit farther step back so he has to lunge a little bit farther. So it's a little easier, a little cleaner, and it's easier for you guys to see probably. But as he moves in, boom. Because what happens is when you're closer, it's good, but I need to react instantly the moment he moves. If you give yourself a little bit more of a fighting measure, it gives you some more time to intercept and to step. So, now he's going to go left lead, same basic idea. I can still step out with my left, notice still covering the groin. Okay. Okay, I'm going to step the other direction. See, it works equally well. So, boom. Now, I make him, it depends on how he's punching. I'll probably end up on the inside of his punch here. But it's possible to go over it, depending on how they punch. If they're punching from here, you make them right over the top. So, just play with both ways. Boom. I mean, really, you don't have to, it depends on how the guy's punching. Just punch straight as you step off. Make sure that your rear foot is turned so that you can't get kicked easily in the groin after you hit him. When you hit the guy in the face, people tend to lean back on their foot, just kind of kick back and automatically kick in the nuts. One more time. Boom. Okay, now we're going to show you, once again, a little bit more realistic way of applying this. Possibly one way you would do this in a fight. You can throw his punch. I'm doing that little curve after the end. Now we did one step, intercepted, curve. Okay, do that a couple of times, and I'm going to close the line up. Sorry about that, wrong hand. So stepping out with that rear, boom, cut, and then when you want to close the line, boom, throw that rear straight once again, and just keep hitting. You know. But for this drill, now notice I'm breaking up the rhythm. You can do it very fast, all three, pop, 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 which is like so. Or you may step out, break that up a little bit so it's not robotic. And notice he's covering right away, which is what you want. That's good for him, but it's also good for me because it's hard for him to see me now. Okay, so work that a couple of times. Okay, one more time with this. Moving, doing that curved footwork at the end, and then closing the line with the straight. All right, now here's another option that you can work where you're moving towards the rear hand. And once again, in unmatched, we'll go real slow. I'm going to step out, intercept with my lead. Okay, then he's going to continue to throw that punch, because even if he gets hit, you have to assume he's going to continue to attack. Boom, boom, I'm going to cut. Now, as soon as I have this done, one of the most beautiful things we love to do is what we call the straight blast, which is a hand-over-hand punch taught in different video series. There's many different ones, but I tend to use body behind mine, but you can use the short ones if you want. So once again, stepping out, boom, he throws the punch. I'm going to cut that line because I'm already sort of turned, and that's the quickest way for me to respond and still be able to hit him right away. And then I'm just going to hand over hand punch. Now, he may try, some guys will try to get back around with the glove. If you have decent control, you don't have to go too soft because it's on the shoulder. Don't go too hard either, but you can just blast the shoulder on this one. Or the face, whatever. Okay, so he's doing this. Going. So it's important to note that with the past three techniques, it's not important to be perfect. I'm just imposing my will on the guy. Once I open up the line, you blast, and the forward energy is what takes control. So as Steve punches, I'm just taking control instantly, and that's what's going to do it. It's not the technique. It's taking control, forward energy. The final piece of footwork is the rear step. And as JKD guys, we almost always do this with a lead jab, and this is called the defensive jab. This one is sort of hard for people to figure out because when you step and you put your weight on your rear foot, it tends to be counterintuitive that there would be power in your straight lead. But the idea is the timing and the way you plant that helps you to get this power off. So if my opponent is coming in and I'm being rushed, the idea that we've taught before is that you want to be on the end of your punches for power. Now, there are certain short little snappy punches that you can do. This depends on what's happening, but he's pressing me, and for me to try to jab at this point at a close range or do a straight lead isn't going to be quite as effective. So I'm going to take this step off, and as I plant, just as the weight settles to the rear foot, that is when the lead punch comes out. It's sort of that idea of that equal opposing forces, you know. When I step, boom, the punch is coming out and making sort of a nice impact. It's especially useful because your opponent is coming forward. We practice this on a focus glove, and it's much harder to feel power because the glove is staying stationary, and you're trying to gain power as you do it. But you can get power doing it that way. But so Steve's going to keep his rear glove up, take a step forward. I'm going to step back, and the idea is he's trying to smother me a bit. So boom, he steps in, and one thing that this helps you with is that it helps you to align your hips in some of this a similar way to when we do that straight lead, stationary, or moving in. So the step back is giving me the distance I need to get on the end of my punch. So as he steps in, so you really want your partner to try to smother you, because if he's just doing a small step, you would just do an intercepting punch. So this is sort of where this comes in. Steps, boom, I'm stepping back, and I'm right on the end. Notice that my hand is up, not only to cover my chin, my shoulder is up, but this is also immediately ready to fire back a punch. So he steps in, putting that weight. Fall onto that foot and try to time that the time that your foot settles into the ground, that's the time that you should be going to full extension with your punch. One more time. Okay, and always be ready to follow up with your next attack. All right, to make it more realistic, this time when I do this drop step, this defensive jab, I'm stepping back, and we're going to imagine that this doesn't stop him. And it's going to be easy for your partner because he's catching it with his glove, right? So he's going to continue on and just feed some high line punches. So for this one, and again, there's going to be a lot of opportunity to play with this in sparring where we may not cover here. But because the punches are coming high, if I just rotate straight back forward, I might run right into the punch. So we're assuming that this didn't stop him for whatever reason, you didn't land it properly. So we're trying to think to the next step, trying to prepare. So I'm here, I'm going to level change. That means sinking the legs. So if I get hit in the head at all, it's going to be the forehead, which is the best place if you have to get hit. We covered that. And then I'm going to drop straight in with my rear. Sometimes, depending on if I'm on the outside of his punch already, I would have to bob and weave just enough to get inside. If I'm just back and I'm still in front of him as he punches, I can level change and go straight in. Okay, so that's going to be the fastest way to do it. But if his punch is already on its way, even level changing, coming straight in, I'm going to run into it with my forehead. So take that punch, he steps in, boom, I'm dropping straight in with this. Now I'm going to the chest. You can also angle the punch up. You can do the level change and then come back up with the cross, or go straight into the sternum, which is a beautiful sort of shot with that rear straight. But another way is as you take that step back, boom, I might just, he's going to start throwing those punches. As I come in, I'm going to take those covers, right, that we talked about, just enough to cause some damage. So watch, as he steps in, boom. What I'm doing is right away taking control of the hand, trying to cause some damage here and moving forward. Just try working in the things you've already learned. And again, it's not about this is what works in this situation. It's about having a few options and then working them when you have a live partner so that you can practice getting involved with everything that we've taught. Now, footwork is your primary way of defense, but almost as important is the upper body movement as well as upper body and head movement. So what we're going to go through is the slip, the duck, and the bob and weave. And again, these are defensive things. These are your secondary responses or your way to get inside. So a slip is, as described in Jeet Kune Do, and I've seen people do mildly different versions, that's why I say that, is that it's like you're going straight forward, but rotating your shoulder. So we're right to right. So I'm taking my right shoulder, rotating and coming at a diagonal off the line. The way Bruce Lee taught it is he didn't want you to create too much of a gap between the edge of the person's arm. He said that the punch should almost graze you. Now with boxing gloves, they probably should at least eventually, it should touch your hair if you have long hair, or kind of graze your skin sometimes. That's when he's going to think he has you. So if it's on the rear hand, it's the same idea. And this time I'm rotating my shoulder forward. Notice that I'm keeping the chin in the shoulder, and I'm keeping my head down and looking up. You don't want to look, you don't want to be here, so I want to have my head tilted downwards, so I have to look up just a little bit on these. So as I rotate out, it's going to create that nice entry. Now, I like to get the closest you can get to the person's elbow, the better it is for your defense. If I slip and I'm here, it's going to be a lot easier for him to throw his second punch. Now, that's one of the reasons why intercepting is so good for us. But if I slip off this line and I'm a little bit deeper, even though he's retracting, he has to take a lot more time to turn and cover, to cover my attack and to attack himself. So I'm going to work at taking that slip, and then after I get good at it, I'll take a lead step. So on the lead, I'm going to go in. I either step on the foot or I try to put my foot next to this. Now, when we're trapping or when we're really lunging forward to take control of the opponent, we'll actually lock knees, and I'll hyperextend that. But for the sake of the slip itself, I step on the foot or just enough where I can get my knee over center line. So he takes that slip. We've talked about this before. You can slip to the inside, but you have to have something planned for the rear hand to check it, to punch immediately to cover that line. So if I slip the lead hand, it's a step. Notice I'm not going way out here, because he'd have that second punch. And then if he throws to the rear hand, slip. And you see it's just bumping my shoulder, just touching me. And I'm going to keep this on the outside. Now, a lot of times I show these things with one hand down because I want you to see the line. Your hands should always be up, both hands. So as I'm slipping one line, boom, the hands should be right around the chin. You'll see us in JKD have them out here. So just remember, when you get in close, they're going to start hovering around the head, closer to like a peekaboo feel. So you're taking that shot. Slip, takes the rear shot, I'm slipping on the outside. Notice the shoulder. If he had happened to throw that punch low, my shoulder would be bumping that shot. It's not a matter of just slipping this way where he can catch the front of it. It should be the outside. He's punching high, so I'm slipping and going under it. And I'm looking back towards center. So that's your slip. We also accompany these with a punch simultaneous or before, so that's our intercepting. Now we're going to do the duck. And a duck is a level change. This is when a punch comes in and you're sinking underneath it. When Bruce Lee taught this, he had a lot of forward energy always implied. So there was never a duck and straight back up. There was no reason to do that. So if you did duck, it was either a duck to a hit or a duck to a lunge. Okay, so duck, sink in, and take down, with the various things you see in the Dao Jeet Kune Do. So the level change, the quickest way to do this is literally let your legs go limp and almost lift your feet off of the ground. That's if you're going to go under a punch, the only way that's the only way to do it quickly enough to get under. If I try to just sink on my own, he's going to hit me. But again, important to keep your hands up, because if he's faster than you think, you at least have something. This would be, again, something that you use strategically, not something that you just randomly do because the guy's punching at you. You have to have something planned at the end of that. Okay, the bob and weave. The way we do this is, again, sometimes a little different than the way other people in boxing or various other styles may do this, but it's pretty much the same. But sometimes the philosophy of the way you fight will change a little bit of how you do this. But the bob and weave is a secondary response. The defensive response, again, is that since we're not able to intercept at that moment, or we want to open up and go inside and get control, we're allowing this punch to get past our lead hand without intercepting, or it's been able to get past it before we were able to intercept. The idea is you want to think about sort of a face of a clock. Okay, if he's punching on my left side, I'm going to go out at 1 o'clock. One way to remember this is to think about, people say, oh wait, is it 1 o'clock or is it 11? Think about you going away from the punch. That's the easiest way to train that. It's like, I'm not going to go towards the punch and bob and weave. So even though you may forget which hand on the clock you're going, just think of those diagonal points, okay, 1 and 11. So if he's punching, I'm going away from it. Notice that right away, my head sinks down into my shoulders, okay? I'm not bobbing and weaving like this. Head sinks down, hands are up. So it goes in, I'm going out. I'm then using my legs to sink under. I'm not going to be at a right angle. I'm not looking at the floor. I should still be looking at the body. The hit is understood. Okay, in Jeet Kune Do, the hit is always understood. So as I come through, I'm coming out at 11. So I went out at 1, I come up at 11. Now what we usually try to do in Jeet Kune Do when we're using this in an actual sparring situation is we try to come up with a forward step. So work that into it after you get the basics down. So he throws that, going out, boom, and I'll step in because I want to stay tight and not let him follow up with this combination. If he throws the rear, I'm going to go out at 11, okay, or I should say if he throws to my right side, depending, it doesn't matter what lead he's in, goes out, I'm going to go out at 11, same thing, sink, keep those hands up, tuck the chin into my shoulder, use the legs to sink in, under, hit is understood, and I come out at the other side at 1 o'clock. What you should do as a beginner level, and even if you've never, or if you just haven't done this version of the bob and weave before, is make sure that you do this in ones. So he throws the 1. What he has to tell you is how far. If you're going way off the line, if you're bending and looking at the floor when you do this, your partner needs to tell you. Work in front of the mirror as well. So if I'm here, I'm doing this, I'm in a bad position. I don't know what's waiting for me when I get up. Boom, and it's over. So I'm taking that nice clean look. I'm here, I come back up, and I'm ready to hit. He might be ready to hit too, so that's why we try to angle in. He takes the other side. Boom, I'm going out at 1, taking that dip, and I come up. I like to come up on the rear behind their shoulder if I can. Not always possible, but then you're immediately ready to follow up. So do this. Then, once you have that, start working in 2s. It doesn't have to be fast. He throws a 1, 2, 1, 2. Only do this when you're comfortable moving with your legs back and forth on that nice little, the arc between 1 o'clock and 11 o'clock. Because what you'll end up having is you'll start kind of doing the technique wrong if you don't. So really make sure you spend the time on the first ones. Then we go 1, 2, I'm going out, up, up. And then you can even do them in sets of 3. But the most important thing is to do 2s and go faster and faster, and then break up the rhythm. The next most important thing is to learn how to take a shot to the body. When I say take a shot to the body, I mean to try to minimize the damage. One of the things, the most common ways of taking a shot, now again, in Jeet Kune Do, we're always thinking hit first, but it's not always available or you're surprised like the other ones. If I'm in close and I'm already sort of, like I said, when you're in close, I said this before, your hands are much closer to the body than when we're out here and we're sort of thinking more with a fencing idea with our lead hand. I'm already in close or he has stepped in close, my hands immediately become a little bit tighter to close up that line. Because normally my hand would be here and that's going to let him inside. Okay, so depending on, if you're already a boxer, you already know this stuff. Right? If you already have played with this a little bit. So you covered this inside. He goes to throw a hook, let's say, to the body or a shovel hook. The most important thing for me is to not get hit directly in the ribs. That's the first thing. But just putting your arm in the way can still, with a powerful striker, especially if you're fighting a sort of a heavyweight, and we're thinking street fighting. If you're thinking sport, you're never going to fight a guy heavier than you, but we don't think like that in Jeet Kune Do. So you may have a guy much heavier than you throwing that shot, and even though you get your elbow in the way, it's going to knock the wind out of you. Also, if I put my elbow down like this, he might be faking and then taking a high line. So I drop here, boom, and taking the shot to the face. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to sort of take the peekaboo. I'm showing you just with the right hand so you can see. But I'm cupping my ear a little bit here, and then when he goes to punch, instead of dropping my arm to take the shot, I'm going to crunch. Okay. So the way this works is I'm crunching sideways, and instead of opening up my high line, I'm actually covering both lines, and it's also flexing the muscles along the obliques, which helps to make it a much more solid impact for him, and which means it's more protective for me. So as he takes that shot, I'm covering there. Now, there's a slightly advanced way of doing this, and this is more effective for dissolving the energy that's transferring into you, but it takes more time. So if the guy really hauls off and takes that shot and you see it, you would take a step out and try to step with that. Obviously, the problem with that is if you don't have enough time and you start stepping while he's hitting you and you get knocked off balance. So you don't want to have your foot in the air when he's hitting you necessarily, although if you know which direction you're going, it can be useful. It's advanced, so that's why I say you don't want to have that happen right away. You can have the guy knock you in the direction you're going, actually, and use that. There's some sensitivity stuff we do in Jeet Kune Do with that. But for now, what I'm going to do is he takes the hook to the side. I'm going to crunch and step with it. Now, one way that we do this is we'll have your partner just put focus gloves on, maybe mildly hard, not completely the hard ones, and they're going to slap you with a body hook. And you just practice with that. Then you can have the guy work up to the boxing gloves, because you will feel a little bit more of the knuckles through, and it's going to be a little more solid. The focus glove spreads the energy out a little bit. But when he takes that shot, I'm taking that step, okay? I would have him practice both body hooks and shovel hooks. So if he's shovel hooking here, I need to get the outside of my elbow right in front of that punch. Okay? It's not the front of it, because it also leaves me too exposed. So if he's coming in for the side body, I'm rotating and I'm keeping my hands kind of right here tight, and I need to be flexing and tucking down, or crunching down, sorry. If he takes the other side, it's the same idea. I'm stepping out and flexing. Same way as we did the cover before with the flex, and you'll notice if you got good at that before you moved on, you'll notice that it's a very solid shot if you're doing it right. It's a very solid cover. It should be the same thing here. He'll notice if I'm not doing it right, because my arm will move into my body and it hurts. So if he hits me again, I'm going to take this nice, and as I flex my arm and I cover. Now, one thing you may not be able to see from this from here, but I'm still looking at my opponent when I do this. I'm not looking away. Okay, so that's very important. You take that shot and you're immediately thinking on the half beat. The moment he touches you, I'm going to hit again. I'm going to go right back on the end of that. So if he hits, I'll go ahead and show you that. I'm going to go right at the end of this. One more time, sorry. I'm taking my shot right away. And it might hurt, especially if he's bare-knuckled, right, or if he's a professional trainer. But it's better than a professional fighter, I mean. But it's better than taking a shot to the ribs. Once the ribs move around, you can lose your wind, you lose your breath, and it's very hard to continue your fight. So he takes either side now. And so that's the idea. I've gotten good at this. Okay, we work this, I get tight at it. And when I say this, we're kind of time-lapsing forward. You may not get good at one for several days. But the idea is to get good at it and then have your partner step off and do either side. And I'm just going to roll with it. Okay? So that's the idea. Get in and really work that crunch. Make sure that the abs are active, and especially the obliques. Keep the hand and the elbow covering the entire length. So your head and your elbow should be, your hand and your elbow should be touching part of your body at the same time as you crunch down. And you'll know if it works, but depending on how well you can take the shot. All right, lastly, we're going to cover hand defenses. And the way we fight, this is probably the lowest percentage of what we would use defensively, especially without head movement, because we're an intercepting style and in a very aggressive forward energy style. So, but it is important to know because, again, you're not always going to know exactly how the fight's going to go. So things like, what we consider a hand maneuver would be a block, a catch, or a cuff. And these types of things are important, but it keeps you on the defensive. So just remember that as you work this, you're always trying to get immediately back to being on offense if you're going to win the fight. We've already covered the catch, so we're going to begin with the cuff. A cuff is sort of like an upper catch, but it is to get inside. So the idea is as opposed to a forward pop, this one is coming in and up to send his punch up. This works well against a person that's driving forward because you can come up and under their punch. Now with boxing gloves, sometimes you get hooked on them a little bit. But the idea is, boom, you want to pop that up. If I were to use this stationary, and like we said, we have to use head movement, body movement with this stuff. If I were to use this stationary, it's not useful at all, really. If I just stand here and pop his punch up, all it does is let me stand there in front of him for his next punch. So if I'm going to cuff this, boom, I'm going to step in, or I may step to the outside, depending on the way you do it. There are times when I've used a lead hand cuff, but it's very rare. It just depends on how my weight was settled. I might pop the one up and then cut with the rear hand as I'm stepping out. Usually, if you do any kind of defensive stuff in the way we fight, we're going to leave the lead hand available for the counterattack and use the rear hand for the pop, the cuff, or the catch, right? So he throws that. I'm moving in and under the arm, say, for the continual attack. I can cuff it up. Now, there's two ways that you can do this. With the boxing glove, like I said, with the curved part of your glove, get your hand caught together, depending on the type of glove you have. gloves do you have? So you can also do this from the side. You can cuff it up from here, but you're popping, just like the catch, you're popping up and under to lift the person's arm. Don't drive, don't push, because the more committed you are to a movement, a defensive movement like this, the more open you are to attack. Also, once again, I'm moving my head off the line just enough in case I don't catch it in time. You can't assume that you're going to catch this and move it out of the way and not get hit. So I'm taking that move, boom, slightly off the line, taking that punch, and I'm going to follow up. And this is where, again, you'd add your footwork and all the various things, getting off the line, circling, or just driving straight in with like a dive or something. So just the cuff by itself, popping it up. I'm trying to catch right under the fist itself or just on the wrist. Depending, if I'm doing the side one, you can catch the wrist. If you're catching it from the front, it's right under the hammer part of the fist. Pop it up, you can sink and then move in. All right, now we're going to cover parries, which is basic inside-outside movement to deflect punches. Again, we don't ever use a parry by itself, and we've not found much use for it in the type of fighting that we do. I mean, many styles are based on outside blocks, but a parry is just designed to move the punch off of your line. When we do a parry, it's always assumed that there's a shot involved, but I'll show you the parry by itself. Okay, so I took my gloves off to make sure that you can see what I'm doing. The parry on the inside is I'm just trying to move his hand off center. Now for us, that's so it can go over our shoulder and we can continue in with our straight lead. Sometimes people use this defensively as a surprise. For us, the catch is better than a parry by itself because it's easy for him to come right across, and now my hand is out of control range, which is across my center line. I don't want to be there. So, but the parry by itself is literally just moving it enough to be off of my center line. Other arts do this a lot farther. We'll do what we call a complete parry. We don't ever do that. It's just a small pop of the wrist to get the punch moving on the outside, on my outside. If I want to go on his inside, my outside, I'm going to be turning my hand over and just guiding the punch with the inside of my palm. And if you've seen any of our Jeet Kune Do stuff, you've seen the interception by the rotation of the hip and the movement here. But the idea is if he's punching straight on this line or he's throwing a sort of a hook, I can just turn into this, and as I elongate the movement, I'm catching that punch. By itself, you can do this, but like we said, it's not a part of our fighting system to just do this by itself because it leaves you completely open to a second attack. Never say never if that's the only thing you got in your brain and it stops you from getting clobbered. Okay, but you want to kind of train yourself to be aggressive and be on top of your opponent. So with the parry, you're either popping to one side, boom, or you're popping to the other side as he throws his shot. And this should leave you always in a position where you can counterattack. So the wrong way to do this would be, if he's throwing the hook, is to reach out here. That's not a parry, that's a block, and it leaves me wide open for the second attack. Or if I'm blocking this way, it actually will knock him into my punch. So simple, small movements, and then this should set you up, if you do it properly, for your continued attack. All right, now I'm going to show this out of an orthodox stance. So again, punch comes, I'm going to check this on. I'm leaving this hand down so you can see. Your hand should be up and you're checking. Okay, so just that pop with your rear hand. So now I'm in left lead, so my right hand's going to do this. So if he's punching for the chin, it's just a pop, okay? Just a pop. Don't get in repeating this again, but don't get yourself crossing over your center line where he can right away pull back, and now you have to try another block. You want to get immediately into being able to fire back. So if I do have to do just a parry, which we don't suggest, but I can at least throw another shot from there and at least run an equal footing. If he punches on the outside, boom, same idea. Putting the weight on my lead foot, cover and hit. Now, above all, you got to preserve your partner. I mean, we talked about being careful with things. One thing that Bruce Lee ran into was having trouble finding live people to train with. And it's hard enough to find people that are willing to spar with you, but if you destroy them and injure them while you're working with them, you're never going to get any better. And hopefully you guys are training each other. You're not going to, one guy's not going to benefit more. But one of the things that we do to work on this is to control the follow through of our punch. And that is, you can be, we'll say build up speed, be faster, but that doesn't mean you have to be trying to knock each other out. And we talk about this in other places where if you get knocked out several times, it becomes easier to get knocked out. So it's not being tough, it's being silly. So what I want to do is practice my follow-through. So we have a 1 to 5 drill where as we work through this, I'm going to practice controlling my intensity and the depth of my punch until I get to the fully committed punch. So the fully committed punch we have is at 2 inches of depth when we do a straight lead. So what we do is we work on getting almost no follow-through, where I'm just touching the surface. We call that cracking the egg. You barely, if there was an egg sitting on the surface, you just barely crack it. You wouldn't splatter it all over. And then as you work up, you get to the point where you can go from cracking the egg to really snapping that punch out and causing some damage. So some people I know see this as a wasted drill, and I know several people that would say, oh, we just want to learn how to hit hard. Problem is, always being fully committed can also make you overcommitted, and like we said, you're going to destroy your partner. So this is the 1 to 5 drill. Now, when he calls out 1, there's zero commitment. There's zero inches or measurements of follow-through. 2, there's a ½ inch of follow-through. 3, there's an inch. 4, there's an inch and a half, and 5, there's 2 inches. So the fully committed punch. And so that's not easy to do, and it's very hard to measure, but you can tell by dividing it up that you're at least incrementing your shots. So my partner, Steve, is going to just call off a number, and if you're a beginner at this, you can just start from 1 to 5, because then you can at least feel that you're incrementing. So we'll do it that way first. As I get better at this, then he would name these off in a random order, because that's much harder to do. Because sometimes you say, oh, that was a 4, and then you realize your 5 is the same intensity, right? So he's going to start out with, at the beginning.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Now the next drill that you could do is add combinations. So with a drill like this, they're always going to be straight punches, okay? But Steve can name off 2 numbers then. So if I'm going to do a 1, 2, he can name 1 and a 3, or a 3 and a 2, or a 5, you know. And this becomes much more hard, much more difficult, but it really helps you to be in control of your body and in control of your punches. All right, this drill is called opening the guard. And the idea is you're inside, you're already fighting, and you've got a guy who's got a pretty good stance. He's not just some schmo that's got his hands down swinging on you. He's trying to keep covered. And so what many times people do is they just keep punching and punching and punching, and they're hitting the guard, and they're wasting a lot of energy. And you know, there's various ways that we use to attach and to come in. This one is quite nice. We got this directly from one of our trainers, Bert Poe, and Dennis Blue really worked us a lot on this. Is that the first one is I'm going to take this punch to his elbow. Now we've done similar things like this in JKD, empty-handed with cuffs and pocks and things like that. But right now I'm taking a shot, and Bert Poe was a boxing champion. So this was something he did in the ring, is he would take this, drive his opponent's arm across with a punch. So for one, it's not a friendly little movement to try to get a punch in. It's a really nice, it's an actual attack. And notice how this line is wide open. Then I take the next shot, which is usually going to drop the guy's arm, boom, and then you can follow with the head shot. So we're going to do this as a drill. I'm going to just take this, boom, take the shot, 1, and then 2. Now, my partner can step back in, do the same thing to me, where he drives in, takes the elbow, goes to the body, and then to the head. I'm going to come back in, 1, 2, 3. Now I'm doing this very slowly because I want you to see how it's done. The idea is to work up with a pretty good rhythm and movement so that it becomes much more like fighting. Now you might separate at one point where we're actually doing this. It might not be in a perfect, we're in always the perfect range where he can do here. Sometimes he's gonna get away and I'm gonna be over here, and then boom, we'll enter back in, get to a position. He's gonna pass that, take the shot, boom, 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 and then we're right back into this again. So let me just show this one time clean. As I do this, I'm not going to hit him my hardest right now because, again, I want to damage my partner. But you don't want to uppercut under the elbow. You want to take the outside where it's flat, And at his height, I'm taking sort of a shovel hook or a hook, but either way, you're just trying to drive straight through. Move, uppercut or shovel hook here, high hook there, over the arm. So one more time. I really want this to move. It's not just a matter of punching his arm, right? I'm going to go move this through, and I'm kind of keeping contact until I'm ready to hit, which is instantaneously, but it's not just a hit. It's I'm driving through, taking the shot, hitting high. Then Steve drives back in, same idea. Drives through, takes a shot, boom, follows through on the face. All right, to do this a little bit more realistically, we're going to actually crash into each other a little bit. So I'm taking this off, I'm in close, drive this, he's here, drive. And so again, we're moving, I got to be close, you've got contact now. This is where this happens. I'm not going to do this from out here, right? So I'm here, we've crashed, boom. We're in tight. Okay, and this is how this is going to work. So the second one that we move into, again, works off of this idea. You don't typically come in from 5 feet away to do these and try to move the guy's arm because he's hitting you. But we're here, we're clashing. This one I'm going to move in by just driving my forearm in and up. It's going to open up. And if you can, you're sending his weight back onto his rear foot. By the way, good time to remember to keep your groin covered. Okay, so we're in close, tight. I'm going to go send it up, shovel, maybe shovel again, and then follow with something high. And again, this can be done as the drill. So I'm going to send in from here, and then he moves back and he clashes with me. Boom, boom, okay? And see, once the arm is open, there's a shot right there. And you notice by default, my natural instinct is to drop my arm. That opens your face. So once you get the first shot in, he might go low. He may take the high shot. But it's important when you get this, really work the realistic feeling of this. It's not just lifting his arm and punching him. He's not going to stand there for that. It's a clash. Boom, boom. You're taking this as you send him up, and notice I'm moving him. And this is where your legs are involved in this. Here, boom, shovel, whatever, and then your next shot. One nice little trick that you could do, may not be allowed in some sporting events, is that when you're inside with this, and you're getting in, instead of going to the body, go right to the hip. And it's a great way to collapse the opponent, get them off their balance. And once they're off balance, it's much easier to follow up, which is obvious. So here, set it up, boom, straight into the hip, and then follow with your other punches. Okay, to wrap things up, people have said that sparring is not realistic. And that is true in the sense that you're not beating each other half to death. But that's why it's useful. Sparring drills get you to the point where you're willing to spar, you have control, and by learning control, you were able to get to a position that just going crazy may not get you to. You have to learn that balance and that recovery. So yes, and that level sparring is not realistic. Sparring is not the same as doing self-defense or combatives drills. And so in that sense, it may not be considered realistic, where you're taking the person and twisting the head and going crazy. But the fact is, people that spar are learning timing. They're learning to recognize punches coming in at speed, learning to move. Where you stand and have people throw one punch and you practice killing them, you're never going to get that skill. So if you don't have skill and you're practicing combatives, it's going to be very hard to make it work in a fight. And from experience, when I started Jeet Kune Do and we really started focusing on sparring, the other stuff that I already knew actually became better. So sparring is actually, as Bruce Lee said, you can learn how to swim on dry land, but until you get in the water and splash around, you don't even know if you can swim. And so to us, sparring is getting in the water.